welcome to the Clarity Fiber Arts podcast. My name is Jody, and I am the owner and the dyer behind a small hand-dyed yarn company called Clarity Fiber Arts. If you are new to my relatively young podcast, welcome. This is episode 8. And if you are a returning viewer, welcome back, and thank you so much for all of your recent support of the podcast and for returning to check out what I have to offer in 2023. Before we get started, I have some very brief administrative shop news relative to Clarity Fiber Arts, but something that is super exciting for me, and I hope for you as well. I am going to be leaving the Etsy platform. Etsy is something that I have been involved with and selling my wares on for almost 5 years now. And I just felt like with the amount of time that I have to devote to Clarity, I would move it off of the Etsy platform and move it onto an individual website of my own where I feel like I will have a little bit more autonomy and ability to kind of show off some creativity and some more of the items that I am working on for the coming year. And so I'm going to post a text here of my new website. I was happy enough to be able to secure a clarityfiberarts.com, and so anything I refer to from here on out, whether it be the sale of my hand-dyed yarn, the sale of my accessories, including the hand-cranked socks and hats and mitts and things that I make on my circular sock machine, everything in that realm will be over on clarityfiberarts.com. I'm hoping to start a blog there. I have a huge amount of plans, but I tend to get overly ambitious, and so I'm just going to set my mind on a few limited things at this point in time and sort of develop that website into something that I hope is very beautiful, very curated, and something that everyone will get to enjoy. So cheers to that. Cheers to 2023 and starting some new direction with Clarity Fiber Arts. I'm, as I said, thoroughly excited and ready to get flowing with that. There is not much on there right now. I have left my prior inventory over on Etsy as a means to sort of phase it out in pieces, and I'm going to keep that inventory over there, and moving forward with Clarity in 2023, I'm going to just kind of restock the shop. And with that, I am hoping to stock more than just sock yarn. Sock yarn will always be my initial and favorite to dye. I dye typically pretty highly colored, brightly colored, speckled and variegated yarns for primarily vanilla sock knitting or shawl knitting whenever you need a pop of color. That truly is my love, and that's what I love to dye. However, starting to dabble in dyeing some heavier, perhaps DK weight fibers for sweater knitting, and maybe getting into some tonals and things of that nature. And so that will be coming. If you go to the website now, it's just sort of a little introduction into my hand-dyed yarn company and the services that I offer through my circular sock machine. But like I said, keep checking back. And with further podcasts coming along, I will update you on what's over in the shop, clarityfiberarts.com. What have I been working on? Well, it's been sort of a strange knitting phase here with the holidays. I've heard a lot of podcasters sort of have a similar story. With all the gift knitting that was going on, there was very little time for selfish knitting, and I was no stranger to that same saga. Clarity Fiber Arts always has a bit of an uptick at the holidays. I have a tendency to hear back from repeat customers who contact me through email or through Etsy messaging, wanting loads and loads of sock orders for gifts. And so I can pretty much expect come late November to have some of the same repeat customers wanting 6, 7, 8 pairs of hand-dyed, hand-cranked socks in various sizes. I do work on a made-to-order basis, and so if somebody needs something in particular, I am happy to not only dye it for them, but crank them a pair of socks. And so everybody, I'm happy to report, really loves the hand-cranked socks, and they do have a tendency to think about giving them as gifts at the holiday season. And so this year was no exception. I started to hear from people around November, and so was just dyeing and cranking away on some hand cranked socks for gift giving. I did not take pictures of all of those. In the future, I plan on being a little more mindful of what I'm producing and taking pictures of the things that I'm producing, because it just helps to sort of document what's going on with Clarity Fiber Arts and some of the things that I'll be producing and having in the shop. And so I could have shown lots of pictures of lots of various socks, but like I said, was not mindful of that and just sort of got the orders finished and got them out of the way. I will insert a photo here of a dye session that I had with my very best friend. She came over, I think it was around Halloween, and I did have record of this in my last podcast episode. But we had a bit of a sleepover and a fun girls' night watching movies and stuff like that. And then the following morning, she was interested in learning how to hand dye yarn. So we threw 4 skeins of sock yarn into the pans, and I just left her go crazy. She has a husband and 2 boys and herself. They're a family of 4, and she was hoping to dye 4 matching skeins of yarn in sort of a very outdoorsy colorway, sort of camouflage, so to speak. Her husband and her boys are both outdoorsmen and hunters, and she enjoys some of that type of thing as well. And so we had this idea of dyeing the yarn and cranking out 4 hats. And I'm going to get her permission, and if she gives me the go-ahead, I will insert a photo here that she sent me. It made me extremely happy. She sent me this photo Christmas Day morning. It was the first thing I woke up to, this picture of these cute, adorable little smiling faces wearing their hats. And I don't know about you, but as a knitter, one of the best things that can happen is to receive a picture of the recipient wearing and loving their hand knits. And so again, with her permission, I will insert a photo here, but I just love the way the yarn turned out, and I love the way these hats also came out. And so that was part of some of the gift holiday cranking that I was doing. I crank the hats on my circular sock machine in preparation for the holiday season. I knew that I had wanted to increase the cylinder size of my circular sock machine to accommodate being able to crank a larger scale of of hat, and I was really happy. I sent away for a 72 slot cylinder, if that makes any sense to anyone. It's basically just 72 needles doing the knitting, and so that gets you 72 stitches in circumference. Then I ordered the matching equal slot ribber dial, which gives you another 72 stitches around that match that ribber dial. And so if you set your machine, sorry, this is a lot of technical stuff, but just as a way, I don't know how many crankers are watching my videos, but if you set your machine on half pitch, the needles that create a purl stitch so that you can rib on your garments, if you set those needles at half pitch, they come out just between the two needles that go up and down. And so you've got a needle going up and down catching the yarn, and then just to the side of that you've got a needle on a horizontal surface that comes out, grabs the yarn, and creates a purl stitch. It's super fascinating in my mind. I'm very obsessed with my circular sock machine and all the things that we can manipulate it to do. But yeah, so we're talking about 72 stitches going up and down, and then when set at half pitch, I can, purling every other needle, I can get another 36 stitches onto that. And so we're talking about a decent size circumference of hat, one that would probably replicate a hand knit hat. And so that's what I did with my friend's hats, and she reported back to me that they all fit and the boys all love them. So I was really, really pleased. It was an investment to purchase one of those cylinders and matching ribber dial, and so I'm really pleased with the fact that it came back and I'm able to knit some adult hats. Prior to that, I have a 60 stitch, I ordered my machine with a 60 stitch dial, and even with an equal slot at half pitch, it gave me only approximately 90 some stitches, and I was getting reports from adults that those hats that I cranked were just slightly too tight, and I was having difficulty getting a gauge and yarn combination that was able to accommodate an adult size head. So that's what I was doing over the holidays. Lots of hats, lots of socks. I apologize, I'm yammering on about all of the gift knitting that I did, but it really did take up my time. It took away from my personal knitting, which I felt pangs of desiring to do in the early morning hours, which is some of my favorite time to knit. I was finding myself really feeling like I should come down into my craft studio and do some cranking, but what I really wanted to do was sit by the Christmas tree and do some hand knitting. In that vein, I did sort of give in to some of it. Looked for a little bit of a hand knit project that I could cast on and get some satisfaction from, and so I have that right here. It's the first thing that I'm going to show you. Let me get this situated here. So I'm going to show you from the side because it is a cowl. It's a cowl, and it's a bandana style cowl. Very simple, very basic. It just has a little bit of like a spine running down the front. But I wanted to show this to you. In my last episode, I talked about a visit that I had to a local alpaca farm near me called Silky's Alpaca Farm. And I'll just insert a little photo here of some of the cute alpaca that were there. But this is knit out of some of that yarn. The first skein I bought there was a fingering weight alpaca yarn, and the owner there, Marcia, who is just a lovely human being, pointed out to me which alpaca this came from. His name was Bossa Nova, and he was a beautiful alpaca, and he was out there with his, I believe it was a boy, his newborn son, who was only 8 weeks old. And so it was perfectly sweet to sort of see the source of your alpaca yarn. And so I don't know if you can see here just in the way it drapes and feels. I paired it with a similar color mohair that was also for sale at this farm and matching. And so this is just, a bandana style cowl that is just squishy and lovely. This is the Winter Witch Cowl, and it's by Samantha Troya of Bumblebee Acres Farms. And so, although gift knitting season is over, I don't think it's exactly ever over. Valentine's Day is coming up, and us knitters always want to be knitting for people that we love. And so this took me, I think, 2 or 3 days to just sit and sort of bang out on, I forget the size needle. I think it was a 5 or 6 on here, but no time at all. It's a bit of ribbing. It is a paid-for pattern on Ravelry. Just a bit of ribbing, knitting around with, like I said, the spine down the center, and then it sort of comes to a point down here when you wear it. Hold it up a little higher here. It sort of comes to a point. It was a, like I said, a bandana style cowl. I did bind off a little tight, and so it doesn't quite sit in that bandana style that you would hope for, but it's just for me, and I wasn't interested in kind of ripping out. I just sort of wear it all scrunched up around my neck, and it is super soft and super warm in the chillier climate. And so that is the Winter Witch Cowl by Samantha Troya of Bumblebee Acres Farm. If you're looking for a quick gift knit, this would be the way to go. And the alpaca yarn is from Silky's Alpaca Yarn, specifically Bossa Nova, and I was just really happy with the way that came out. Another friend of mine contacted me, and she was looking to gift a pair of mittens to a mutual friend of ours, and thought that it would be fun and interesting and cool if I knit the mittens. These girls are both major Penn State fans, and so she was hoping to match the hats that I had cranked earlier. My family and I had gone to a Penn State whiteout game, and she had seen the hats that I posted on Instagram with the paw print, and she was hoping to knit a pair of mitts for our mutual friend in some white yarn, and then put the paw print down here on the cuff. Excuse me. By the way, look at this sweet little mug that I got. This is from Hobby Lobby, and it's just a regular coffee mug. I'm just drinking water out of it today, but look how cute. It says, "I make beautiful things," and I saw it and I bought it for myself because I feel like I do make beautiful things, and I'm quite proud of it. And it's actually a conversation sparker. I had this at work with me one day, and someone saw it and read it and said, "What beautiful things do you make?" And so it gave me an opportunity to talk about my passion, which is knitting, and Clarity Fiber Arts, and it was just sort of a cool thing. Anyway, back to the mitts. So Mandy contacted me and said, "Could you make these mitts? I'd like them in white, blah, blah, blah." So I just set about to find something a little more interesting than a basic mitten pattern. And I found this on a website called Free Vintage Knitting. Here, I'll put that up. There's where I got it. I sort of printed it off. Here's a picture of them. They're just sort of a textured, it's, I believe, seed stitch pattern. But I just thought they were a quick, cool, and they're vintage, so that's kind of cool, like a vintage vibe to them. And so here's what they look like up close. They sort of have a really cool texture. And I used the rest of the mohair that I got at Silky's, and then I'm not sure if it's showing up on the camera, but I did use Wool Ease in their sparkle colorway. My girlfriend had asked for something sparkly, and this fit the bill, and paired with the fuzziness of the mohair that I had left over, I thought these just turned out really super adorable. And then I am on the hunt for a paw print. The ones that I used were black. The Penn State colors are navy blue, and so I'm really on the lookout for something navy blue because the black didn't quite cut it. I have an end to weave in here. But again, gift knitting in February, super quick. This took me one night to knit, almost. Maybe like a night and a half, but not much at all. And I just think I'm all about, you guys, the yarn combination. I'm all about combining yarns, as you will see coming up next. And so these don't even have a name. They are, let's see, where is this? Mittens pattern number 387, free. So there they are. The instructions are a little, they don't kind of walk you through things. It's pretty self-explanatory for a beginner or intermediate knitter, but the way they're written up is a little wonky. So make sure if you do go check out those mittens. I just thought the texture on them was great, and just a cute little quick gift knit that you can knit up. So that is that. Next on the list, isn't it true? You always think you have nothing to share. And here I am going on 17 minutes, and I haven't even touched base with what I'm going to knit. And so I always try and keep things under 30 minutes. I'm not sure how that's going to go now, but and I feel like I'm a little rambly. I feel like I'm a little out of practice, so I apologize for that. This is a new setup for me, by the way. I'm super happy about it. I've moved from being up in my main living room to down into my craft room where everything is. Duh. I received some things for Christmas that allowed me to sort of have a better setup down here podcast-wise. Did a lot of rearranging in the new year down here, and so I think this might be my permanent setup because I can run some videos and show you how I crank on my circular sock machine. Let me know in the comments below if that's something you're interested in. Lots of circulating talk about circular sock machines. I was watching the Wool Needles Hands podcast, and she had just recently borrowed a Centro circular machine from a girlfriend of hers and was cranking some hats. And for me, it's just a way to showcase my hand-dyed yarn and to sort of give people an idea of how it knits up. And I am absolutely a fanatic about the socks. They are vanilla socks that I crank on the circular sock machine, but they really showcase the yarn in a beautiful way, and they are soft and warm, and the recipients that I gift them to or sell them to really, as I said before, just sort of love them to death. And so but so down here in the new area for podcasting, not quite as bright. When I am upstairs, I have those the beautiful light from the skylights and things like that. But from what I can see on here, I think this setup works. Of course, like everybody else, through the season, I was knitting Sophie scarves like crazy. I knit 4 Sophie scarves to give as gifts, and I kept one for myself. This one hasn't even been blocked yet, but this is the extra large size. But I just wanted to give another shout out to the Sophie scarf, because let me tell you, I was sort of not understanding what the big deal was about this scarf, but I now do, because this is my go-to scarf to put on in the morning. So a lot of people throw a shawl over their shoulders, or just some sort of woolly to keep them warm. But I am finding that if I just put this scarf around my neck and sort of tie it off, that this, and maybe it's the yarn as well, I'm not really sure, but I just sort of wear it like this. And so I'm often seen in my kitchen in the morning in my pajamas with my Sophie scarf tied around my neck. And your neck is kind of like your head. I think that when this part of your body is warm and cozy, it doesn't matter really what else you're wearing. It sort of instantly warms you up. And so I'll often have just like a t-shirt and a pair of sweatpants on or something in the morning. And again, I just reach for this, throw it around my neck. It looks a little ridiculous, but it is chilly down here in my craft room. And so I'm often kind of just throwing it around my neck that way too. And I find that it warms me up without being too much. And it's so inobtrusive. It's just around your neck, warming it. It's like a turtleneck sweater without having to put a turtleneck sweater on. I don't know. I can't explain it. Let me know in the comments below if you have knit the Sophie scarf, if you love the Sophie scarf as much as I do, if you didn't really know the appeal of it until you wrapped it around your neck and felt the cozy warmth of it. I don't know. Again, maybe it's the yarn I knitted in. I talked about this in the last episode. This yarn is from a local to me yarn shop, and it is also alpaca, baby alpaca, I believe, 100%. And so the drape and the squishiness of this yarn, it's got a bit of a halo to it, if you can kind of see there, and a fuzziness. Like I said, I didn't even block this yet. I just knit it and threw it on. The softness and fuzziness just adds to the nice warmth around your neck. And so if you have yet to hop on the Sophie scarf bandwagon, I suggest you do so. I was a little, admittedly, like, what is it with this Sophie scarf? I do not understand. But like I said, I knit 4 of them now. They're relatively quick knit. They're knit on, I believe, size 5 needles. And so I knit 2 as gifts, and I knit another one for myself. I had a 5th quantity of yarn to knit as a gift, and that one did not get finished, and I do believe now I may keep it for myself. It's a red one, and it's so cool. It's just like the one in the pattern, and I do believe that I may be knitting and keeping that for myself. As a matter of fact, I know I will, because it's already on the needles, and it's looking like my next Sophie scarf, so that people don't have to see me in my gray one all the time. And so, yep, you've seen it. Maybe you have even knitted it as a gift, but don't know if you love it. But if you don't love it, throw it around your neck on a chilly morning, and you will instantly find love for this. The other thing that I talked about in the last podcast was, I think it's really important, if you're gonna knit this, if you haven't knitted already, is to pick a drapey sort of yarn. And so this alpaca, this 100% alpaca, is really drapey. I can't imagine it in a stiff yarn, to be honest. If you've knitted in a stiffer yarn, or let's say an unspun yarn, something like that, let me know in the comments and let me know how it goes. But I love the way it just sort of hangs down like a regular, almost like a silky style scarf would hang. So lots of love for the Sophie scarf. All right, the pile's going down. Next, I want to show you, this is sort of, probably should have been back in the shop news. One of the few things that I have left with all the cranking that I've done are these Scrappy socks. And with my hand-dyed yarn business and with lots of sock knitting, I often find myself with 5 or 6 grams of colorways sort of left over, and have sort of been toying around with the idea of cranking some Scrappy socks on my machine. Wasn't sure of the complexity and how long it would take relative to another pair of socks, but I had all these scraps and I was trying to clear some cones for some new colorways, and so I just spent an afternoon and cranked these out on my circular sock machine. I think they turned out super, super cool, and this is probably one of the first sections in my shop that I'm going to put in, but I just think Scrappy socks are the bomb. I tried to pick colorways that sort of went together, pink and purple and brown themed here. They do not match. And I think that's also the beauty of Scrappy socks. They sort of match, but they sort of don't. This was just a trial, and these are definitely for me, but I've already had them on my feet and got some compliments. I had them on with my Birkenstocks and got some compliments when I was out and about shopping about my socks. And so if Scrappy socks are your thing and you're looking to gift a pair of Scrappy socks, head on over to the website and check out the Scrappy sock section and see if there's anything there that interests you. I thought they were really cool, something totally new for me. Now, I've never hand knit Scrappy socks nor machine cranked Scrappy socks, and so that's them. Okay, and finally, let me take a sip of water before I go here. Sorry, 27 minutes. Lastly, I had a tale of woe, and my tale of woe has turned into a renewed love of my Nutiden yarn. So let me take a sip here. There's a lot of explaining to do. So if you have tuned in before, you will know in some of my earliest episodes, 1 and 2, I believe, I was on a journey to learn or to newly knit with Nutiden unspun yarn. And so I did a whole video on the process of securing some Nutiden yarn, becoming a Patreon so that I could get a colorway that I liked, all the things. And then, as I said before, on a very impulsive style, as I do, I said to my husband, I want to knit you a cardigan. I picked we went on a website and I said, pick whatever you want. I was not, I consider myself a seasoned knitter, and I consider being up for a challenge of, sort of anything. And so he picked the Tamarack cardigan by Jared Flood. The Tamarack cardigan by Jared Flood is, you knit the sleeves first, and I had no trouble with the sleeves at all. I was loving the Nutiden yarn. I was holding it double. I was pulling from 2 plates at the same time, had some breakage in that realm relative to the unspun yarn, and so I started winding it into balls, and that went better. And the sleeves sort of flew by. The cardigan was knit on size 9 needles, and it was sort of similar to the style that I'm currently doing. But when I got to the body, there's a podcast episode about the body. It was huge. It started to get a little heavy, and kind of cumbersome, but I was knitting flat, but having to flip purl and knit and purl. It was seed stitch, So I was knitting and purling and throwing the yarn back and forth. There were lots of elements to the knitting of this sweater that I feel personally did not coincide with trying to work with unspun yarn. I find that there's two camps of people in the podcasters that I watch. There are people who are extremely used to and very agile with knitting with this style of yarn. And then there's people who are admitting to not enjoying the process as much because of the breakage and the fragility of the unspun yarn. And so that made me feel a little bit better, to be honest. I was feeling a little guilty. I promised my husband this cardigan, jumped in head first and hit my head. This sweater started getting heavy. Every time I flipped it, I was tearing the yarn. And so I started to sort of manipulate the placement of the yarn prior to having to flip it. It was a long swath of knitting, and really I just could not manage it. It was bottom up, so I knit the sleeves and then had to attach the sleeves, wound up like putting the whole thing sort of on the floor so it was supported while I tried to knit on the sleeves into the whole situation, which further made it even longer and more cumbersome. I was over halfway through and I just couldn't take it anymore. I will always be honest with you and hope that there's an appreciation. I thoroughly enjoy the podcasters that are just honest and say, this is how it is. I frogged it. I made the wrong yarn choice, whatever it was. I'm appreciative of that because let's be honest, that's what knitting is. Knitting is a lot of trial and error. And I was extremely excited to try unspun yarn, dove in without any sort of trying it first. I did swatch, but the swatch wasn't enough to sort of give me the idea of what it was going to be like to work with this yarn. So I very quietly put the cardigan aside, and I was working on some other pullovers in the meantime, and my husband sort of saw me working on other things and kept asking where his sweater was, and for a really long time I could not admit to him that I was sort of done with it. I had used up a good portion of my Nutiden, but I had purchased so much that I knew starting over was probably in my future. And so all that to say, I am happy to report that I have since seen a lot of podcasters that have somewhat remedied this situation by holding the Nutiden with a strand of spun yarn to give the unspun yarn a bit of integrity and a little bit of a sturdier quality to it relative to moving it and moving the garment around as you have to do when you're knitting, things like that. So I'm happy to report that the Nutiden has come out of its hiding place. I have chosen another pattern with a little more intelligence, let's say, this time. I chose a top-down cardigan. I have chosen the Cardigan number 8 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, and I am holding it with a strand of fingering weight yarn. And so here's what I have so far. I'm gonna throw this, I guess, down here on the floor. So here's what I have so far. It's coming out to be, so the Nutiden yarn that I have is called Silhouette. That is the name of the yarn, and you'll see in previous episodes, Silhouette is a gray, but it's not a solid gray. The plates have varying shades of gray in them. And then I'm holding them with a strand of yarn that I have in my stash. I had a huge quantity of it, and I just wanted to get started on this sweater, and so I didn't really go shopping for an alternative. I had a sweater's quantity of this yarn. This is the yarn I'm holding with it. Let me show you. Whoops. Okay, so here's what is left of the plate of Nutiden. You can see it sort of goes light to dark, and this is the silhouette colorway. So that's my Nutiden. This is a yarn I got at Hobby Lobby. It is Yarn Bee low pill. I forget what it's called. Yarn Bee low pill. I'll link it down below, but I have a ton of this because it also does run through my circular sock machine. And so if I'm looking for just a really cool, like a basic gray hat, I knit several of those. This is the parchment colorway. And like I said, I will link it, but it's a Hobby Lobby and it's acrylic. And so some of you may think that it is sacrilege to hold an acrylic yarn together with my Nutiden, my beloved Nutiden, but let me tell you what, the fabric that it's yielding is both rustic and drapey all at the same time. The Yarn Bee yarn is soft and it is very drapey, and then the Nutiden sort of gives it structure, oddly. You would think the opposite, but it's funny how the Yarn Bee gives the Nutiden structure, and the Nutiden, when knit into the fabric, sort of fills in the gaps and creates this beautiful, lovely sort of drapey fabric. And so I am once again in love with Nutiden yarn. Stay tuned because this thing is flying. It is knit on size 9 needles. I'm knitting with a bamboo needle at this point in time. My arthritic thumb is giving me some trouble, and so although it's not the fastest I could knit, I sort of need to have this yarn stay on the needle and not be as slippery, because I find that when it is slippery, I grip the needle harder and I wind up with thumb pain. And so, yeah, I went on search for a basic top-down cardigan, and I found the Cardigan #8 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, and I saw lots of pictures of it. I don't have my pattern here to show you, but saw lots of project pages on it. It's a unisex sweater. It's boxy, oversized. It's got 13 inches total of positive ease, and so I felt like I'm knitting him a size large, but he wanted like a big boxy sort of oversized sweater, and so I am super pleased with things so far. Stay tuned, but I really don't foresee any sort of problem with holding it with another strand of yarn. So if you have knit with Nutiden and found yourself a bit frustrated, you know, to be truthful, I was frustrated about the fact that it seemed to me like other people could knit with this yarn without any trouble, and I didn't know kind of what I was doing wrong. And in all honesty, I don't think I was doing anything wrong. I just think that the pattern pairing and the yarn did not lend itself to the beginnerness of my affiliation with this yarn. And so it sat and it stared at me, and I just was really sad, and I was frustrated in myself in that I couldn't seem to grasp knitting with this yarn. But I do believe I have found a way to knit with this yarn, and perhaps moving forward I will develop a more comfortable interaction with this yarn, in that I can just hold it single-stranded or double-stranded and knit solely with this yarn. But for now, I'm going to chug along and deliver the cardigan that I originally promised my very gracious husband, who just said to me, you know, if you can't do it, you can't do it, and don't frustrate yourself. But that's not my style. I get very frustrated by things that I can't understand or things that I can't sort of find a workaround for. So here I am knitting the cardigan number 8 for him. So stay tuned about that journey. Let me know in the comments below if you have knit with Nutiden, what your experience is, and whether or not you'd be willing to give it another try with a strand of something a little more, let's say, stable, held with it, because I've seen a lot of people have really great success with that. And so I think that is all I have for today. I have some winter knitting plans, but to be honest, after watching some podcasts this morning, I think those knitting plans might shift a bit. I haven't put anything on the needles, but I definitely only have my husband's cardigan going, and I tend not to be an exclusive one garment person, and so I'm hoping to put something on the needles for myself, but after watching Taylor of Wool Needles Hands, she has enabled me to perhaps go in a different direction with some simple raglan style pullovers that are really structurally just really beautiful. And so I think I will save my future knitting plans for a future episode. I apologize that this has gone so long. I do plan in the future to be less wordy. I'm a little out of practice. It's amazing how 4 weeks out of practice can render you a little chatty and wordy and not on your game. But I'm hoping to be back in 2 weeks with some new knits and some new things that I'm working on relative to clarity. I'm hoping by that point in time my shop is open and I can send you guys over there and have you check out all the cool things that I've been knitting. So once again, I thank you so much. I want to wish you a very happy and a very healthy 2023, and I look so forward to all the cool things that I have planned for this channel and for my shop moving forward in 2023. And I would love if you are enjoying this content, if you would come along on that journey with me. I have so much enjoyed meeting people and interacting with everyone, and I hope that through this podcast we can do a lot more of that. With that being said, if you have enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. It really helps me with the good old algorithm to get this podcast into the hands of people who enjoy knitting content. Really, that's my only goal here. I am so pleased with the amount of subscribers that I have already. I never even expected it, and the interaction, and so I would love more of it, and hope that you will consider liking and subscribing so that can happen. All right. You guys take care. I hope you find a little bit of quiet time to grab your knitting and find a little bit of clarity. Take care. I'll talk to you in a couple weeks. Bye-bye.